Welcome to Accelerate. It's another weekly webcast, and we have an exciting and deep topic today. It's the topic of how to accept where we are. And this is such a fundamental challenge and opportunity in our life. It represents probably something that we struggle with from the beginning, especially when we're not aware of it. And then even later on, when we are aware of it, it's not so easy. And there are some things we can do, though, to make it easier. And that's what we'll be discussing today. So I'm just waving, sending some hearts, and wishing good mornings and good evenings, wherever you are. So accepting where you are. Fundamentally, what's so hard about that is that we tend to extrapolate from this moment of just looking at where we are, and we project into the future. This is at the root of much of our struggle, is this constant projection and constant expectation. And in the same way that we plan things out, we also try to just predict things. And so we're really predicting the future. And I say this all the time. If I ask you outright, can you predict the future? Your answer would be no. Except for a few clairvoyants among you. And that's what happens when we try to look at the situation as it is that our mind wanders immediately into the future, what this means, all the work it would take to get out of it, what do I need to change? It gets overwhelming so fast that we freak out. And it feels like we're freaking out about the present moment, the assessment of where you are. But because so quickly and so fast, the mind jumps to what this all means and what it means for the future and for yourself and all the effort it's going to take to get out of it. That's where we become instantly overwhelmed, and we blame it on any number of things. That's where blame comes in. That's where we get down on ourselves. Depression sets in. We criticize ourselves, and we just put all the pressure and all the weight on our life. This is my life. This whole projection of the future, of what it will take to create change, is we just identify with that, and that becomes our life. And so no wonder it's really hard to accept what is, because we're always adding most of what we add, most of the weight and the pressure that we feel comes from what we add to it with our narrative, with our story. And that's where we get really bogged down. So this idea of what it will take is also a narrative. This is the mind always making up new stories and trying to control things. It's trying to control the unknown, which is the future. And that's a tall task, to predict everything that's ever going to happen. One thing will lead to the next thing, to the next thing, the next thing. You're connecting all these imaginary dots that don't really exist and that will never, there's few blanket statements in life, but you could almost for sure say life is not going to unfold this way, the way you imagine it. And it's because life is far too diverse. It's not a bad thing. There's just too many opportunities, too many energies at play. Your imagination is too limited to really think of everything that can happen, and then just project into that which one of those options are going to come true. The energy at the moment of you projecting into the future, connecting all those dots, is the energy of right now. The mood of right now, your mindset of right now, particularly when it comes to these overwhelming thoughts, is you're in an overwhelmed state, and now you're trying to project the future from that place. And of course, you're going to come up with thoughts that accentuate and amplify this sense of overwhelm, the mood that you're in, the mental fragility that you're in, and it just gets worse and worse. So, thoughts feed on themselves, the frequency, the nature of your thoughts. That's why it's so important to be vigilant with your thoughts, be able to choose which ones, have space around them, be aware of them. And that way you can choose which ones to engage in and not get dragged into la la land down the rabbit hole every single time a thought comes along. But this is what happens when we try to accept the present moment. If we find ourselves in a situation that is not as we like it, which every situation is not as we like it, particularly if we're prone to focusing on the things that are not as we want them to be. Life is an evolution. It's an unfolding. Your story, the story of your life, is unfolding. And you can't say ever, "Oh, I'm here. This is it. I've reached the finish line. It's done." No, as long as your heart is beating and you're breathing, it's not done. So you'll never reach that finish line. You'll always be alive and kicking. But we don't want to think of it that way. We chase outcomes. We chase our happiness. We think we have to assemble a circumstance a certain way. And then once we achieve that, then we're happy. Then we can stop working, working on ourselves, working on life, trying to predict and control things. Then we're finally done. And that day will never come. Even just rationally thinking about it, it becomes clear. No, you keep growing. Tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow you have to get up again and make something of yourself and the situation and the day, and it's going to keep evolving always, forever, till the end and beyond. There is no end, really. So this is the big challenge, that we rationally, the mind is so stuck in this idea that by accepting something, that it means all these things. And it will take all this work to get out of it. And you connect the dots in the way that are so instantly overwhelming that, we shut down. We get down on ourselves. And then we're really paralyzed. And what do we do then? So there are some things we can do, however. Most importantly is to absorb the information, right? This is not something you typically hear about. That's why we're talking about it today. But a lot of what we just said, you can rationalize this. You can intellectually understand this. You can understand that life is always changing. It's always evolving. And to think that we can just, that accepting something and then everything that we have to do to come out of it is going to be, this is the truth, then it just doesn't make sense. We can't predict the future. The mind loves permanence. It thinks that by accepting something, that now it labels us or defines us or blemishes us a certain way, that is also forever. In the same way that the mind it takes these snapshots of people, of places, of things, of our experiences, and it makes them, permanent, memorializes them. And so if we have failed, we are now forever a failure. And so things like this, or I will never get out of this. These big blanket, all-encompassing statements. And so that's what makes it really challenging to accept a situation. Because when we're just in our head, and then we tend to think that everything is forever, always. And we've heard these things of, this too shall pass, these sayings. But if we're really glued to our thoughts, if we're just too much in our head, then it just doesn't matter. The power of the mind is too overwhelming. And so we have to do some work to create some awareness around our thoughts. Again, I want to emphasize that the mind is a miraculous tool, beautiful tool, but only as long as we use it for what it's designed to do, functional, organizational, practical matters. If you have to get from point A to point B, you have to book a ticket next week or something, then it's great to have a mind to help you with that. And of course, it regulates your body autonomously, and so it's just incredible. But it doesn't contain any wisdom, and so that's where we have to have a grounding, a foundation within our body, our inner wisdom, our inner voice, our inner divinity. And that's what really tells us when something resonates and when it doesn't. That's our guidance system, not the mind. So trying to solve a situation by just thinking about it and accepting it just by thinking about it is a tall task. The mind freaks out. It doesn't have the ability to do that, really. It's just always trying to negotiate with yourself and with your environment of like, okay, I'm just going to accept this. And you can sit there and pretty much notice this. It's like, if you just try to mentally accept the situation, it's not going to happen. The mind just isn't designed for that. It's too fickle. And it'll just get lost in thought instantly, lost in thought about all the things that overwhelm you, and all the work it's going to take to get out of this, to create the change you want, to create the life that you want. And even that is has a negative spin to it, right? Is to feel like you have to create it all. How much pressure is that? That your life is dependent just on you. There's no greater current, no greater consciousness, no greater plan. It's just you who has to figure it out ahead of living it. Man, there's so much going on in our heads, and we really have to learn to quiet it and come down and sink into our body. So therein lies one of the first solutions to learning to accept what is to be more in our bodies, not so much in our head. Most of those things are just thoughts. Thoughts are energy forms. They arise and they pass. And if we just allow them to arise and pass, then they will. If we don't glom onto them and react to them and engage with them and let them pull us down the rabbit hole, then they will just come and go. So thought awareness is key. Again, that'll be one of our meditations today. To just not giving our attention to these thoughts. It's a bigger way of being. It's being the container for these thoughts. It's disidentifying with these thoughts that just come along and tell us something is permanent and real and forever, and it's overwhelming. And if something feels overwhelming, just scale it down. Bring it down to you are not your thoughts. You have control over your thoughts. So if you want to engage with thoughts, scale it back to where something doesn't feel overwhelming. It's actually quite simple. It's like, okay, I'm thinking too big. This is just too much. It's too overbearing. So just simplify the thought and bring it down to something that feels easy and light and fun. For this, however, we need to be in our awareness. And that is understanding, first of all, that we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings. And secondly, having a practice in place, mindfulness practice, a meditation practice, a stillness practice, a presence practice that grounds us more in our body so that we can be present because that's what our body's always present. If we find our home there, then we connect to the present moment through our senses, and our senses are inputs that show up as feelings in our body. So being aware and holding space and present with our sensations keeps us present, keeps us in the now. And that keeps us from spiraling off, getting lost in the rabbit holes of the mind, of all these endless streams of thoughts, compulsive thinking. And rather, we're in this place of much deeper peace and, more importantly, deeper knowing. We feel our truth when it comes to situations. And we feel it because it resonates. And that is a deeper truth, a deeper knowing that cannot be influenced by, no matter how many outside voices you're surrounded by, that barrage of everybody saying they know what's best for you. You just know deeply what's right for you, and everyone else can think and say whatever they want. So back to this accepting the present moment. There is the meditation practice, right? The coming out of the head and into your body, and that is so fundamental that will change your life. It's the way we're supposed to be living. In former times, we were probably much more in our bodies due to doing more physical work, due to being more embedded in nature, being outside a lot. And all of that is very grounding, and that kept the mind at bay. In this modern life now, we're in office buildings and inside a lot of the times, and wearing shoes that separate us from the earth. And so we become disconnected, and just through education and society and media, we're always pulled into our head. We're always reacting to something. And so that's why we become so head heavy. And now we need to do extra work to compensate for the natural grounding that used to be there when we were living in and with nature. And we have to make up for that. So most of us are not working in the fields or chopping wood any longer. So what can we do to make up for that so that we have that connection to our body? And of course, that just being outside helps a lot, but even that has its limits. And the true ancient wisdoms and texts are all about really understanding your inner world. So for those who are called to explore their inner world, that's where meditation comes in, and prayer, and all the internal sciences. Yes, Crystal, modern society makes it shameful for grounding to flourish or exist within one's body. Yes, there's all this chatter and all this noise around your body and being in your body. And in a way, that chatter keeps it at the surface, right? That you should be comfortable, or you should accept your body, we should accept other people's bodies. All this talk keeps us our attention at the looks level, at the how comfortable are you in your body, but it doesn't take us deeper. So there is an entire component in modern society that's just very surfacey and keeps things surface because it's keeping our attention focused just on these surface topics, and it's preventing us from going deeper. Yes. Crystal, by the way, I want to bring you up on stage a little bit later, because you had a great story that you shared through another channel about last week's session. So if you're up for it, I'll bring you up in a bit, because that was really wonderful to hear. And everyone else should enjoy that too. Okay. So accepting where you are. There is no path of least resistance that is greater than accepting where you are and then taking clear action from there. This is the rational part that anyone can understand. If you just think about this a little longer and in a little more detail, just spend a minute on this and you'll see very clearly that, okay, before I can change anything, I have to just be cool with the way things are. I have to accept the current situation so that I have all the information that I need. If you're lost in thought, the projections of the future, the shame and guilt, regret of the past, you're not really here to look at what the situation entails, what are the details, but you're just lost in thought. So accepting really is seeing things as they are. That's the key here. It doesn't mean it's going to be like this forever. It just means you have to see things as they are so that you can be best informed. When we're lost in thought, we're not really here. We're not really present. So seeing things as they are, accepting them as they are, is an absolute vital first step to taking action. If you're just taking action on your crazy thoughts, then that's not good action. That's not taking in the possibilities of the situation, because you see those when you're present and you accept, okay, this is how it is, and something opens up. All that energy that you spend lost in thought is suddenly available to, okay, well, what can I do here? This leads to an open-mindedness, a solution-minded mindset. The possibilities jump out at you. The situation really communicates. It tells you, all right, these are kind of the options. You can't make this stuff up by thinking about a future, connecting dots about different events that might happen. You just don't know. There's too much that can happen, and like I said, you're not in the energy of right now when you're lost in thought. So you can only allow a situation to become the present moment, right? We don't have to be fearful of anything. We can trust ourselves that we have everything it takes to allow a situation to show up and become the now, and then to observe it, see it as it is, and then take action. Clear action, because you're clear-headed. And then you're actually dealing with what's real. What are the factors here, the elements at play? And really, it almost speaks to you. This is what I need to do. This is your role in this situation. So you're acting on behalf of the situation. You're not caught in your own mind of thinking about yourself and your life and your future. You become a bigger person because you're engaging with the present moment. You're engaging with things that are real, that the energy of these things is tangible. It's interacting with who you are. And so you become, a facilitator, a co-creator. You've heard that term, that you now have a say, a role to play in the unfolding of life. And that's a powerful place to be in. And it's also a fun place to be in. You don't feel like this anxious little person that has to predict the future, but you're actually participating in life. You're here right now. So acceptance is the absolute requirement, 100%. The more you accept something, the clearer you are on how you can get out of it, how you can create change, how you can help the situation unfold, evolve in manageable bite-sized steps. When you're engaging with right now, you might get a glimpse of the big picture, but you're having to take action. And that action is contained. Uh, it wouldn't present itself in a way that was overwhelming. It wouldn't present itself in a way that is too big, because you're dealing with things that are real, with the reality of right now. The things that present the opportunities, the solutions that present themselves are very practical in nature. I can't emphasize this enough. Meditation, mindfulness, presence, all this inner work that we do, it's not so that we can just kind of sit on the sofa and be at peace. Even that is not proper meditation. Proper meditation is just to observe and accept, again, accept the state of your mind, accept the state of your feelings, allow things to be, hold space for things to be. It's not about controlling how you feel or pushing away thoughts or even shutting down thoughts. It's just to notice, these are my thoughts, these are my feelings. And from this noticing, you are no longer identified with the thoughts and the feelings, but rather you are in your awareness, which is who you really are. You are an awareness of this body, this mind, this name, what you're doing, your capabilities, but they are not you. So again, accepting things as they are, seeing things as they are, is the first step to taking clear action. It's not to wallow in, oh my gosh, I'm going to be stuck like this forever. It's about, this is my palette that I have to work with. The canvas of life awaits, and these are my colors. And now I can do whatever is within my means. And you've heard about, these phrases. These are the most practical pieces of advice, is to do your best with what you have at the time that you have it. We can't do more than that, ever. I think Abraham Lincoln has said that. So it comes down to the specifics of every situation, however. And so we can talk about this a lot, and you can internalize that. Everyone has a different situation and different mental makeup. So the best thing is always to bring up examples and to really hone in on, what does acceptance mean for each and every person in their situation. So with that, I want to bring up anyone that has a question or has a situation, any challenge with accepting something, accepting their reality. Just put a note into the chat. I have a question, or just me, and I'll bring you up here. But I will start with Crystal here, and I'm going to invite you to the studio. Take a minute. Okay. And I see Ida, in the meantime, you have a challenging situation coming up. So yes, stay connected to your sensations. Notice, the headache and the stomach aches and so forth. Just notice the sensations. They're not pleasant, but by noticing, they don't get worse. You don't amplify them. You can allow them to rise and pass. They won't kill you. And that's how you get through difficult situations. Just keep noticing, keep staying aware. Notice, 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 notice. If I had to put reminders, sticky posts anywhere around my house with one word on it, it would be notice. Keep noticing. Yes. browser issue there. Firefox or Chrome, I think, are best. So, accepting things as they are, right, is to recognize nothing is permanent. By accepting something, you're not uh, validating it, you're not cementing it, you're not saying, okay, this is how it's going to be. It's the opposite. You're just in the snapshot of the moment accepting things. Okay, these are the circumstances. And now what can I do as a first step to get out of it? And it's all steps, it's mini steps. It's 1% change that leads to bigger and bigger changes. In golf, if you're 1% off in your swing, it results in 350 yards off the mark in the longer run. So applying this to your own life, if you just create 1% change, that is going to have a huge impact on the trajectory of your life. And so that little change will always, many books and speakers talk about this, how it's just little changes, 1% change, 0.5% change, that will lead to the big changes that you so desperately want. So in combination with that, just recognize these are my circumstances. And then what's the tiniest little thing you can do? You want to start getting yourselves thinking and creating a positive momentum, a positive upward spiral. And that's where these little changes have such a big impact. Otherwise, we just stay mired in the sense of overwhelm, and then we get nowhere. So what good is that? So you can keep trying, keep weighing yourself down with, no, I'm depressed, and I'm never going to get out of this, and I'm just doomed. And that's not a great state to be in, but you can get out of it. It's a lot of it just has to do with identification with your thoughts about your situation. And if you can become aware of these thoughts, then you rise above them. You become bigger than the thoughts. You become bigger than any situation. No situation can get to you anymore because you've disidentified from your thoughts. They're not you. Okay. Just resent you the link. The one obstacle to this, right? Hearing it is one thing, and then doing something about, becoming, accepting is another. What stands in the way is just the busy mind, and it's our instant reaction to thoughts that pulls us into them. It's not like thoughts come along and we choose to engage with them. We choose to get pulled into them, but rather we just react to them instantly. Oh, there's a thought, and oh, I don't like that thought. Or I do like that thought. Same applies to positive thoughts that lead to addictions if we cling to them. But so the same thing, is just that this instant reactivity. It's hardwired in us, the way we're raised and conditioned, is to just a thought comes along and we just believe it. We react to it. And now we're in it. We're identified with it. And Crystal, try Chrome if you have Chrome. That seems to work best these days. I continue to be a tech geek. I was in the industry for 2.5 decades, and going back to the browser wars of the .com era, when you had to code things 3 different ways, 5 different ways to show up in different browsers correctly. And so I stay in tune with things like that. And it does seem like Chrome is actively evolving, whereas some of these other browsers are kind of at the standstill. They don't seem to release new versions regularly enough to keep up with the constant change in technology. It is so rapid now. And it is one of the biggest forms of distractions. This um, this constant barrage of technology, that whenever you have an opportunity to be with yourself and work on your thoughts and be independent of your thoughts, there's some ping from your phone, an instant message that comes in, an email that you need to check, and it keeps us deeply mired in reactivity. And that can be challenging at first, but you've got to do it. How much longer do you want to keep suffering, right? How much longer do you want to keep wrestling with your thoughts, trying to predict the future, trying to live your life in a way that is reacting to everything as opposed to responding? Difference between reacting and responding. You're reacting to a picture in your head of what you think a situation should be, wanting it to be different, even though it's already happened. It's never going to change from you wanting it to be different. And when you could be allowing a situation to arrive and then responding to it, seeing things as they are, accepting, okay, this is what it's like. What can I do? What's a 1% change that I can do to get out of this and start making the life happen that I do want? And again, you have this guidance system that will tell you what resonates and what doesn't. So you don't have to guess. You don't have to constantly compare and negotiate with anything. You just have to follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell said. It's so simple. Life is designed to be so simple, and we complicate it so dramatically that it's remarkable that we get anything done. And we do, but it's not to the best results. It just perpetuates our wounds and our unresolved issues. We create and manifest situations from our inner lack, from the voids within us that we haven't resolved, that we haven't learned to love ourselves, accept ourselves. Talk about acceptance. Accepting who you are is the first step, again, so that you can bring in change. And that change, when it comes to yourself, is never about adding to yourself. It's about letting go of the limiting beliefs. It's letting go of the layers of trauma and the hurts that have arisen, many of which, by the way, are not our own. Jung talks about the unlived life of the parent is the child's primary occupation. It really, we're really just continuing, and a lot of the work that we have to do is around things that aren't really our own. They're not in our field of experience, but we've inherited them. And it's a good thing that you're growing aware of that and becoming, call yourself the black sheep if you want of the family, but it's a badge of honor. You're about to, the buck stops here. You're about to bring an end to the blind perpetuation of ingrained beliefs, of patterns, unhealthy behaviors. So many of the things that we just absorb from our environment growing up, and then we find ourselves dealing with it. So look at how everything is. The best way to make that happen is to notice the detail. You can do this very practically through journaling or through just even to-do lists. Make a bullet list of, okay, this is the current situation. And notice the detail about it. Don't get caught up in the extrapolations and the projections of what stuff means. Just create awareness around how things are, what the circumstances are right now. So you can just write about it. This is why journaling is so powerful. And you stay in the reality of right now and are not lost in thought constantly. So make a list and then question everything on the list of like, is this true? Right? The Byron Katie approach. Is this really true? Is this, who would I be if the situation wasn't true? And just question the stuckness of the mind, the ingrained beliefs that are there that tend to overwhelm and that tend to dominate our experience. All right, Crystal, you did it.
Did.
All right. Well, welcome. I see it's
Thank
dark
you.
where you are.
Yeah, is it? I'm sure no, it is actually. It's almost 9 p.m. So
Yes. Well, it's wonderful to have you join. I know last week's session we talked about fear,
yes,
and you sent some nice comments about a great story that experience that you had, and
correct. Yes.
I would love for you to share that, and then we can even talk about any other challenges that you have.
Well, absolutely. I must first say that I did do the initial like guided meditation with you, which
Uh-huh.
honestly I wasn't 100% sure of what to expect, but what I did end up hearing loud and clear at the end of our session was to take the path of least resistance, which at that moment may not have meant much to me, but made perfect sense. And so um past that point, I guess I just completely internalized that and had a few things happen to me during the week. And one of those things was, my cat unfortunately getting sick last moment and her needing a very expensive surgery as a result. And so normally I think all of us, not just me, but in those circumstances, especially when something comes up suddenly and, we know it's going to cost, it has a high cost and we have busy lives. I think it's probably without us noticing it in our nature to worry about it and fret about it and resist the whole process because it's like, oh my gosh, no one wants to go through this. Like, this is happening, but I'm still resisting the process because it's like, this is going to cost money. When we know that ultimately a majority of the time we are going to do what's best, we're resisting, I feel like, the situation because in that moment, it kind of almost feels like it's just something we don't want to be happening, as opposed to really just, I guess, freeing yourself of what I would say is that resistance. So I made a after days of expensive vet visits, etc., I made a decision to just accept, whatever the result would be and not knowing what it would be. And knowing that there was a huge possibility that it was not going to be to my liking and to something I thought was convenient. But I literally allowed myself to probably surrender for one of the first times ever, at least that I remember. And I said, you know what, regardless of what happens, I'm going to act accordingly. But when it happens, and I'm going to just allow for that time in between to be unknown. I had a minor conversation with my cat, let her know what was happening, etc., which was also quite humorous the night before. And then lo and behold, finally at the last vet visit where I already expected surgery to be on the table, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the issue, which was a blockage, which is very common in cats, was suddenly gone.
Mhm.
So I not only did not expect that outcome because it was probably the most desirable one, but I think that that's what we're all used to is really kind of preparing for the worst. And even if we're hoping for the best, we're still kind of in that sort of mind frame where we're not fully surrendering to the situation. We're not allowing ourselves to look at it, objectively in a way where we can set our feelings aside and just say, well, regardless what happens, we're going to let it happen first, and then we are going to act accordingly and allow ourselves to really deal with it the best way possible. I think that we're so wrapped up in our minds sometimes that it's easy to not allow for that to happen. So for the first time in a very long time, I allowed for that space for there to be some sort of, I guess conjecture and just, thought and whatever was going to happen to happen. And thankfully it happened in my in my cats and myself in my best interest. And I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that it genuinely had to do with a change in my thoughts and my thought frame and my thought process. And so it was definitely a revelation for me.
Yeah, that's a great story, and the power of our frequency or vibration, of course, is tremendous. And there's always a connection between owners and their pets. That the animals are just pure beings, and they absorb who we are and what we're dealing with. So often they are a reflection of what's going on inside of us. What would you say is when you say you just let go? What was the process, or how would you describe that?
It was gut wrenching, because you're literally doing something you're not accustomed to doing, and that makes you feel out of control of sorts. So I think that that's probably one of the main sort of factors is that I think a lot of us like to feel as in control as possible when certain things happen to us that are out of our control. And so I chose to do something, I guess, different, which was just to let go of that notion that I had any control, I guess, at all. So, really, just to be and just to say, I'm going to let things happen the way that they happen. And in this process, I know that I'm doing everything I can. And then, depending on what the results are, I'm going to act accordingly. But I allowed myself to, I guess, let go of the illusion of control that I had some sort of, that I was some sort of factor, I guess, in the process of how this was going to end up, which I absolutely was not.
Yeah, that's incredible. Congratulations. What do you think it is that, we tend to repeat that same pattern over and over of like thinking that we can control life, the future, predict things, and
Well,
then it
I
happens differently. And then
Yeah, no,
we
absolutely. Well, I think it's because there's so many factors in life that realistically are out of our control. I think it's logical that, especially in our consciousness, to do everything that we can to keep things together as much as possible. And I think that we do that within family life. I think that we do that with work. I think, and then there's this I guess the stigma that exists, especially with women, where, we're supposed to be everything to everyone, to our families, to, in our workplace, et cetera. And of course, that differs with men, but there are all these expectations, I think, that are placed upon you by society. And so I think that there's always this kind of incessant need to want to control what is happening, to make you feel like you're in control of your life when realistically that's that's more or less not the case. So I think that if we are more open to allowing really for things to happen as they should, and then reacting after the fact or gaining understanding of it after the fact, I feel like aligns us more with not only who I think we're supposed to really be, but maybe with the whole purpose of, whatever event it was that happened. I think that everything does happen in specific timing. And I think that if we're willing to really listen to what, the meaning behind it was, I think, we really get something from it.
Yeah, that's really, those are powerful insights, and the shoulds of who we should be that drives this need for control, really. And we all are just starting with the expectations of our own parents or of our own upbringing environment, and then education, and then work and society and media, and oh my gosh, there is so much weight of expectation put on us, and then we go about living life, you know, uh, in consideration of that. So yeah, that's a huge source of why we keep repeating these patterns. Now, I'm curious: is there any proof that if we do let life happen, that this worst case scenario idea that it will just be awful? Is there actual proof for that?
I mean, so I don't have proof of that, and I feel like I've had a very eventful life. I think if anything, it's the opposite. I think we actually don't know. Most of us don't know what's going to happen if we take that approach where, you know what, let's just see what happens, because most people don't do that. They're not willing to allow themselves to do that. But I think that we'll find the more we're willing to do that in certain circumstances, of course, within good measure, depending on what your lifestyle is and what your responsibilities are. um, I think that we'll find that things actually end up a lot more in our favor than we would have ever expected them to.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Is there maybe what's the smallest thing? This as just throwing out an idea. What's the smallest thing that one can do to just kind of test that and get the ball rolling on like, huh, if I let that happen and there was no catastrophe,
Well,
and
I
like,
think maybe something that, I mean, I'm sure most of us are, obsessive about certain parts of our routine on a daily basis, whether it's something that we need to get done or a process we need to have done before we go to work or before we get our day started. I think it starts with something small, with maybe deciding not to do something that you would normally do on a daily basis. Something simple could be as like, I mean, I really, I'm sure, the possibilities really differ, but it could be as much as like one less step in that process that isn't immediately so important to you. And then being able to sit back and see that, okay, well, with omitting this one step, it's made me less stressed, but then I've also realized everything has not come crumbling down. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. That could actually be a journaling kind of exercise is to take that one less step every day and then reflect on that because the reflection piece is really important. And to notice how things didn't fall apart.
absolutely.
And one of those journaling prompts should also be, well, what did you experience instead? What showed up? What opportunity? What did you see that you didn't see previously? Now that you created a little space there, and so you know, finding a way to access the wonder and the miracle and the endless possibilities that exist in
Present.
this.
The present
Yes.
in our lives. Yeah, I live in New York City, and so, we infamously call what everyone's plight in the morning is during the week the famous rat race. And so everyone has such a very specific idea of what that looks like and how that is. And you're waking up early and you're getting set to go on public transportation and go to your job. And, if you do one last thing and are not so involved, I guess, in that process of just trying to make sure you do it all, you may just actually be able to potentially notice something that you didn't notice before, and get some sort of joy from it, maybe,
Mm,
possibly.
yeah, 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 yeah. And even if it's just the joy of allow, because there's a relief that comes from just like I didn't have to control this one thing.
Yes, there is.
So yeah, so that's beautiful, and it's very practical advice too. Are you planning to expand on this experience now in any way?
Well, the way that I am choosing to expand is by taking part in these, for now, these lovely weekly sort of check-ins and meditations. And I think that they're very, very helpful, especially when they're guided. And um, I think that it's definitely something that many people are interested in, but I think that, are a little intimidated by not necessarily knowing what to expect, or, not knowing how to really be open to it. So for me, that's it. Out of my week, I will start here and then see where that practice expands to.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, on that note, meditation is we'll take maybe that next 10 minutes or so and close this out with a guided meditation, just as you requested. Look how easy it is to manifest things.
I mean, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Crystal. Thanks for coming up and sharing your stories and the other channels that you're active in. So that was really
Thanks so much,
inspiring
Chris.
to me too. Yeah.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Bye,
Awesome. Well,
everyone.
yeah.
Ciao.
All right. So with that said, we are going to do a guided meditation of thought awareness. We'll do this for about 10 minutes. And again, noticing our thoughts, all the struggle, the tension from believing our thoughts about the future, about our life, about ourselves, about the situation, can benefit from more awareness. And and uh, and it's a simple exercise. You can do it anywhere. If you just have a minute here or a minute there, you can do it then, and that will be enough to get you going. So, with that said, let's find a comfortable position and eyes and mouth closed. Focus your attention on the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. If you have trouble locating your breath, you may breathe slightly harder once or twice. And once you feel the touch of your breath, return to natural breath, normal breath. Let the detail of your breath pull you in closer, closer into the present moment. If your breath is shallow, let it be shallow. If it's deep, let it be deep. If your breath is more in the left nostril, let it be the left nostril. If it's more in the right nostril, let it be the right nostril. Or if it's in both nostrils, let it be both. Notice the temperature of the incoming breath. Notice the temperature of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the pace of the incoming breath. Notice the pace of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. Notice the length of the incoming breath. And notice the length of the outgoing breath. And notice if there's a difference. And whenever you find that your mind has wandered, simply notice it. And without frustration, without resistance, with pure acceptance, bring your attention back to the incoming and outgoing breath at the entrance of your nostrils. Natural breath, normal breath. Observe your breath as it is, not wanting it to be different. And once you feel ready, you can bring your attention back to the room. Relax your body and gradually blink open your eyes. Notice your environment. Notice yourself in your environment. Notice the energy around you and within you. Notice your aliveness. Thank you all for joining today's session, our weekly check-in. Try to take this connectedness into your day or your night, wherever you are. Stillness, spaciousness, this connection to your body, this awareness of yourself. That is your true essence. Till next time.